All right.
Enjoy.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
Um, let's see. So, how are you doing?
Okay. Sorry for my tardiness. My
That's
roommate was not awake yet, so I
yeah.
realized I couldn't take the meeting at home because it would wake her up. So
Yeah.
I wanted to work.
Right.
How are you?
I'm okay. Feel like I'm in that like end of winter kind of slump where I have zero motivation to do anything. But
Yeah.
we are. Um, so I guess our agenda is not very full. Okay, where did it go? Just kind of any review of past stuff that has come up. Um, I know Greg had mentioned any follow-up we might want around the conversation we had in our last meeting with the name is escaping me from the planning board.
The name is
Jesse? Is it
also
Jesse?
yes. That yes, yes. I think that's right, Jesse Connor.
Um, so I don't know if maybe it would make sense for us to try and reach out to the housing subcommittee of the planning board and just see if we wanted to get together for a joint subcommittee meeting of because it seems like that would certainly be a group that it would be helpful to have an understanding of what they're doing and what their positions might be in terms of affordable housing and stuff.
Yeah. Um, I suppose that's probably a good idea.
Mhm.
Um, sorry, I was not I was very glad that somebody came to speak to us at the last meeting. I just
Mhm.
was not thrilled with the content of what that
Mhm.
was. So
Yeah.
I will admit, based on the direction they seem to be moving in, I don't know how much overlap there is
Mhm.
with the work that they're doing and the work that we're trying to do.
Right.
But you're probably right that it is important to at least reach out and keep a road of communication open.
And we can, I mean, I think certainly the question would be like, is there alignment in what you're trying to move forward? And like, if you're the planning board, I guess my opinion or like my content of that last meeting aside, my hope would be that there would be some desire to work together to further affordability. Though it didn't seem like a main goal of theirs necessarily. I mean, I think there are people who try to make the argument that, by keeping investors out of the housing market, perhaps you're keeping some things affordable, which may or may not be true. I mean, I certainly think that people are overcharging college students, and I think that's a problem. But I don't know that that was like the goal of them not wanting student housing, if
Yeah.
so. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think at least saying, trying to get an understanding of what their stance might be on, you know, affordability. I'm sorry, my brain is like sluggish this morning, but so I can reach out to Greg and see if I can get the contact for whoever I'm calling them Jesse at this point, but I
Yeah.
don't know if that's the right name. Um, so yeah, that seems like one. And I think the other thing on the agenda was talking about like various other municipal boards we might want to engage with. Um, Did you have anything else? I mean, I think we kind of debriefed about the forum in our
Yeah.
meeting. I don't necessarily feel like we need to do that again. Um, and I mean, I haven't made any next steps in terms of, God, like organizing any other kind of joint meetings or anything like that. And I think, and maybe that's something that we kind of set as a goal. Like, do we want to just try and have one thing quarterly that we do? Or like, does that seem like a reasonable goal, or, should we be pushing for
Yeah.
more? I can't remember if, I guess it would be helpful to like look at the actual plan that we already came up with, but I think it was like 3 or 4. I don't think it was like something every month or anything like that. So,
No, I actually think that our plan talked about maybe just one or two.
okay.
Um, I can check real quickly.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so we had 3 outreach efforts a year,
Okay.
but we talked about just one annual community meeting.
Okay. Um, so I guess in terms of other places where it might make sense to kind of partner with boards or committees. I know at one point, I think back in 2020 or so, they'd done something with the environmental, I don't know, like energy action, whatever it's called,
Hmm.
but about like sustainability. And I don't know if that might be something that we'd want to revisit. Because again, I think there can be some affordability trade-offs when you're dealing with things like, um, it's oh my God, the building on East Gables and not zero energy, but what low power house? Oh my God.
Passive house, net
Thank you.
zero. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was in there. There were a lot of words
I
floating
heard
around.
the attempt. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's again one of the issues with our housing stock too, is like it's so old and a lot of it's so outdated that just just the way energy prices are going, that's an affordability piece. So that might be something that we could think about looking into. And I don't know, I mean, I think there was I think maybe in part of a broader plan somewhere, there were some talk about like retrofits and stuff like that, if that would be something to look into. Um,
I would love if we could meet with the Community Land Trust in
uh-huh,
Amherst.
yeah,
I'm not as familiar with the actual like day to day of what they do. I mean, we study like the theory of land trusts in
mhm,
school. I don't
mhm,
know how active they are,
mhm,
but that's somebody that I would love to reach out with because I think there
yeah,
could be a lot of potential overlap there, especially as we're educating people about paths to affordability, because
yeah.
that's certainly, at least in theory, one. I don't know if you have much familiarity with the land trust.
Um, I know, so Rob on the trust is a member, and
Okay.
so I could, and I know Maura Keen is also a member, so I think they would be interested in having an opportunity to speak more about their model. And I think a few years ago, somebody came and did a presentation to the trust, but I think it would be great to do something else with them. Because I mean, I think I like the idea of expanding the ways that we're thinking about creating more affordable units beyond just we have to build new buildings, especially given everything that's going on in the world with prices and the fact that we didn't get the funding yet
Yeah,
for this cycle for um, the Wayfinders project. So, no,
yeah.
I think community land trust was on my radar as well. Um, and
I know that we're like in a holding pattern with this from the
mhm,
town, but when the town moves forward with the charge for the ARHA successor body,
mhm,
um, I think that could be an interesting overlap with us.
yeah,
I know that the like final report from that original body discussed housing affordability as
yeah,
a major focus area. So I don't know what form that final successor body will take. But I know for a while, like we had a name and then we don't have a name anymore. So,
yeah,
but regardless, when that's there, I would be really interested in talking with them some and seeing how we can support them as well.
yeah. No, I think that's a good idea. Um, I guess, I mean, just kind of thinking in that vein or wondering kind of maybe some overlap with the Human Rights Commission and talking
Mhm.
about like housing discrimination could be something that we look into as an option. I mean, especially I think one of the cuts that's been made at the federal level was to the Fair Housing Commission
Pressing
in
forward. Yeah,
Mass. So perhaps reaching out and trying to play because I think that another important aspect could be, keeping people in their affordable units, thinking about like tenants' rights and
yeah.
what to do in that sort of situation. So maybe.
I completely agree. I would even be interested in seeing us as a subcommittee
Mhm,
partner with other organizations to create informational and educational, whether it's sessions or flyers or cards or whatever, specifically for the town of Amherst. I know that agencies have made them for statewide advocacy, but like
mhm,
here are your rights as a tenant, and let's help people not have to go through these awful eviction processes.
yeah.
And yeah, so I agree. That's a good call. I'd be interested in speaking with them as well.
Um, I'm just trying like I guess it'd be like I could just like pull up a list of the boards and committees that would rather than just trying to think about what they might be. That might be a better way to do that.
I
Um,
just pulled them up.
oh.
Um, because I was just spitballing too, and yeah, it's like, oh, that's true. They do make lists of these
There's a list somewhere.
things. The housing authority, I don't know how much we've overlapped with them in the past.
Mhm.
Let's see. The I know we've worked with CPAC and go through their budget process. You're on the Community Safety and Social Justice Committee, right?
I am, yeah. And I mean, I think that there's definitely areas where that I mean, I think we certainly at our meetings, people will in our announcement session talk about like, okay, this is the upcoming steps for for different affordable housing programs that are coming out. So I think certainly we're an information sharing partner. And I think
Yeah.
that, we technically co-sponsored the um January event. And I think that's, something that certainly in terms of overall looking at community safety and thinking about like our neighborhoods safe and healthy for our residents to live in. I mean, I think that's certainly something that we look at.
Sorry, I'm reading through the list. The
Yeah.
last one on here that might be interesting to check in with, um, is the Transportation Advisory Committee.
Mhm.
Just because I know that they're involved in providing recommendations to the town on a lot of like complete streets projects.
Mhm.
And that could be helpful to overlap, especially when we have things in the pipeline that we're thinking about,
Mhm.
to check in and see, how can we also work to improve this is another way to improve affordability by saying that people don't have to have a car to successfully live somewhere.
Right. Um, no, I think that makes sense. And I think thinking about like, and I don't know how much role they would have in like, is PVTA going to consider a new route? Like, do we look at that, or is that something that they could weigh in on potentially? Um, because obviously it is helpful to have accessible transportation.
Yeah.
Um,
Even think about, I don't know how much they interface with the Valley Bike folks,
uh-huh.
but even that, like if they can help advocate for new drop off and pickup stations
Right.
being sited close to affordable housing sites, that could be
Mhm.
helpful.
And it seems like the Community Preservation Act and Community Development Block Grant are like more funding stream sources. So I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, maybe that's something we can reach out to the like funding subcommittee to see if they've, you know, that could be like an open, hey, another committee could be working with them or something. I don't know. And I'm the only other thing that I'm seeing that might at some point be helpful would be like the Disability Access Advisory Committee in terms of making sure housing is accessible for people.
Yes. And I heard that they are changing their name, I think.
I think so. I feel like I just saw something like,
I think they just announced it at the last on council meeting
oh,
too. But so I don't know what their new name is going to be, but
mm.
anyway, but yes, I agree. They would be a great organization to.
And I think again, in terms of some of the data that surveys had gotten about people wanting to age in place, it could be something like, are there, what organizations are out there that are able to help somebody build a wheelchair ramp or, retrofit things in their home to keep you where you are, or something like that. Um, So I mean, I think that that's what, so Energy, Community Land Trust, ARHA, Successor, Human Rights Commission, Housing Authority, Transportation Advisory Committee, Disability Advisory Committee. So that's, I mean, that's 7 different groups.
A long list, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that, and like, I think you make a good point in terms of talking about like tenants' rights and fair housing stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be a presentation. It could be, can we develop something that goes on the website and that can be available in, areas where, rental offices or something, I mean, something like that where it's getting the information out to people where they need it. Um,
Yeah. Kind of in that vein, I was thinking the other day, can I share my screen? Is that
yeah.
allowed in this? Okay. Um, so I'll warn you before I pull this up. This is kind of kitschy in a way. It was for an old school project, but I was thinking about um, communication tools in general
Mhm.
and how many different housing programs exist specifically through mass housing and in the state. So this was just an old project that I did where I was trying to put some sense into it. So I made like these trading cards for them. I don't think that's the way we should actually go, to be clear. But it was more of thinking about how do we communicate some of the goals of these projects and these programs, sorry, and what they're seeking to achieve and what these awards look like in a way that can maybe help people distill that a little bit faster as well, I think might be
Mhm.
helpful. Like what made me think about this is the recent project that we were working on that talked about using Commonwealth Builder program. As you know, there are like very specific requirements around that. And
Mhm.
that is not a program that's meant to ensure long-term affordability of units, right? That's meant to ensure like entry point into housing market for households
Mhm.
who otherwise didn't have that opportunity. Um, and then that's very different from some of the programs like low-income housing tax credits that are offered through mass housing that are actually focusing on more longer term affordability. And I think that not a high priority for us, but at some point that might be helpful as well to create a guide so people kind of understand what is being discussed when they see these proposals for projects and like what
Yeah.
is the end goal of this and how does it relate to affordability. Um, because I know that I have heard confusion. I've had confusion myself sometimes looking at projects that are classified as affordable that only mandate affordability for like 2 or 3 years
Mhm.
because they're approaching it from a different side.
Yeah.
So anyway, this was just I was trying to explain some of these programs to like a friend the other day and pulled up that old assignment
Yeah.
um, because I thought it was kind of condensed, but that's something else to add to the queue for again, not high priority, but as we're
Right.
thinking about education, it might be helpful if
Actually,
we
I
could create a
mean,
resource.
I kind of like that it's like visual and that helps me, and having like the different color coded signs was nice. I mean, it could be even like, and I think that there's a difference in like what the trust should try and be understanding in terms of where these funding sources are coming from, and like the person who is living in a home who's like, how do I make sure I can stay here?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but I do think, even just going to the thing in January and hearing like the 11 different funding streams for the, Pelham project, I was like, oh, that's a lot to
yeah,
keep track of.
yeah. And the other piece that, at least since I have been on the trust, which admittedly hasn't been that long, but I feel like there's areas for us to grow in terms of support for projects once we provide funding.
Mhm.
Um, I know that the project that's mostly been in the work since I've joined with Wayfinders, they have like a very dedicated, responsible, fantastic team that tries to build local support and do outreach around that. But yeah, just thinking about how many of these funding streams have to align usually for these projects to move forward
Right.
and how devastating it can be to have people not supporting a project because there's a piece of it that they don't understand and how
Mhm.
much that can set back programs. So thinking about ways we can be better advocates for projects as well, beyond just providing funding and a written endorsement.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that could be a good thing to think about as the education committee, is like, what kinds of talking points are needed around each kind of thing we're doing? Because I think that the North Amherst project has less of a like stigma attached with it than the East
Yeah,
Gables did. And how can we make sure that there's not the stigma to East Gables in the same
yeah,
way that there wasn't to, I mean, I think obviously everything will have like a little bit of a different nuance to it.
yeah,
But for example, thinking about the Wayfinders project, and it didn't seem like there was as much opposition, but one of the things that we were thinking about, was, well, we're kind of building hand in hand with this new school, and like, wouldn't it be great for all these families to be able to walk to school, and like, kind of, trying to play that up as a piece of, I don't want to say propaganda, but like, that's the word that came to my mind. So it's that. Um,
yeah, what's a better word? It's a piece of like a coalition building. right?
Yeah,
Or
much better.
yeah, a little less dystopia.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So as I've mentioned before in meetings, I have some limited ability with like graphic layouts
Mhm.
and Photoshop Illustrator, like your standard Adobe suite. I am more than happy between now and our next meeting to come up with a draft of something
Mhm.
from our committee if we want to have something to share and start getting feedback on as well, like we did with the little charge statement or
Yeah.
the like publicly facing charge statement. Um, I'd love to know what you think would be helpful from that and what your internal prioritization of things are, because over time, I'm happy to help with this as much as you'd like. I'm just trying to balance it with schoolwork. So
Yeah.
I know that, but before our next meeting, I can realistically probably come up with 1 page draft something
Mhm.
that's kind of visual and snappy. So where would you like me to start on that?
Hmm. I mean, I it kind of seems like it would be helpful to have some some talking points for community outreach in terms of, when we are thinking about a new project, what are the benefits to the community of
Okay.
having more housing affordability in town? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Ability. And ideally, do you want that to be more, what's the word for this? Are you looking for something that's a little more viewpoint neutral? That's like, here's some of these great sources that you can check out that tell you more about this? Or are you hoping to have something that is a little more from the point of view of the trust, which is obviously in favor of housing affordability, but also that tries to explain some of how we're connected with this process?
I mean, I think if it could have a little bit of both.
Okay, yeah,
I mean, because I think it would be more genuine if there was like the connection to the trust work and to Amherst
okay,
specifically, but also understanding that for some it can be a controversial topic and having facts can sometimes
right.
neutralize that. So, um, yeah.
Okay,
And I
I
guess,
can, sorry,
oh,
go ahead.
I was just thinking, you mentioned the blurb that we kind of tested at the January meeting, and I just wanted to come back to that and say I thought it was fine. I don't know. I didn't get any negative feedback, or I didn't get any positive feedback either, but I think it was
Yeah,
easy. It was like short and condensed and easy to get out there. So,
the only feedback that I got was what we both heard in the meeting.
mhm.
So it was remove the word projects after affordable housing, which completely agree. I understand if we're trying to avoid stigma, that's better. So I'd redrafted it that uses the term opportunities instead of projects. And I forget who mentioned this, but somebody said it might be nice to include something to the extent of create opportunities for people to live and remain in Amherst,
Hmm.
um, which I also like. So that, um, but yeah, otherwise I didn't hear any negative feedback from it.
Yeah.
So
So maybe at next week's big meeting, we can just represent the statement as, we tried this out. It seemed like it
yeah,
went okay, and there were a few tweaks, but
yeah. Um, that's sorry, I'm reading through what we have again and thinking about this final blurb in it. Um, so right now, is it okay if I read it again just
yeah,
to hear
yeah.
it spoken? Okay. So right now we have the our title, And then a group working to create and maintain affordable housing opportunities in Amherst today and tomorrow. The trust is made up of town staff and residents who are working to promote affordable housing that provides quality homes for Amherst residents at all stages of life. Primarily, we promote these goals by providing funding to developers, engaging in outreach around housing initiatives, and providing support and guidance to town government. And that's what we have. So I think that the create opportunities for people to live and remain in Amherst is kind of parallel with the providing quality homes for residents at all stages of life.
Mhm.
I don't know if we want to swap out the opportunities for people to live and remain in Amherst for the all stages of life. Um,
I
I
think,
don't know. What are your thoughts on?
yeah, I mean, I think that kind of makes sense because I'm just trying, like, what else, how else would you word it? I mean, other than like people moving in and trying to stay in Amherst. I mean, I think, what was your wording?
I had provides quality homes for Amherst residents at all stages of life.
So if we, so provides quality homes for Amherst residents to live and remain in Amherst was the
Yeah,
wording?
yeah, essentially. Promote affordable housing that creates opportunities for people to live in Amherst.
Yeah, I think that sounds, I like that.
Okay. So then it's the trust is made up of town staff and residents who are working to promote affordable housing that create opportunities for people to live and remain in Amherst. Should we add the word quality back in before affordable housing?
Yeah, I think,
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can represent that at our next large meeting. Um, if we can have some agenda time at our next subcommittee meeting, I'll
mhm.
have a draft of that flyer for us. Um, yeah,
So in terms of outreach stuff, I can try and get in touch with people from all the committees we mentioned just to kind of say, we're putting our feelers out. We'd love to have some opportunity to work in coalition with you, where our areas of interest overlap and kind of just see what kind of response comes back.
yeah,
And then, I mean, I think maybe a target for another outreach effort would be the land trust. Like, I think
mm,
they probably have some sort of like polished outreach type thing that they have done before,
yeah,
I would imagine. So I think that could maybe be something that we could try and pull together within the next few months, as an
yeah,
opportunity. Um, I liked the hybrid model. I think there were like 50 people on the Zoom, and I think we had a pretty good in-person turnout last time.
that's awesome.
So I think maybe that's something I can, see if Greg and the town will continue to support in the town room, because I think that's a place where it's pretty easily set up for it. Um,
Yeah,
and I think it helps with accessibility for people who might not necessarily be able to come in, or people who have kids at home who can't find a babysitter or whatever.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, I will reach out to these various groups and see what happens.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, anything else you think we need to address? And no,
No, nothing's coming to mind. I was gonna double check our agenda really quickly,
yeah,
make sure. Not that there was much on it,
No,
but yeah,
all
no,
right,
I think I'm good.
cool. Well, then we will see you next week on Zoom.
Great. Yeah, see you then.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.